Sasha found herself in Hurricane Irma swimming pool to cool off. Hey guys, I know it's been a while since we posted anything, but we've been kind of busy over the last 3 or 4 days. I don't know if you've heard, there was a hurricane that kind of visited us, and we lost power and internet, but we kept recording, and so what we're going to do is we're going to give you just a timeline of what happened over the last 4 days. And I'll let Barbie start off talking about Friday and the Friday before, because the hurricane hit on Sunday night, so I'll let Barbie start talking about Friday before.
So I guess Friday before we started preparing, because we made the decision to stay here. There were a lot of updates on the computer. We weren't sure where the track was going, and by the time we knew that it was coming to us, it was really too late to leave, and we thought we were going to be okay. So we just started making the best of it and prepared the best we can.
And she makes a good point, because the path changed about 6 times, because first it was supposed to be up the eastern seaboard, just out in the ocean, and then over the east coast of Florida, and then through central Florida, and then up, the west side of Florida, and then it kind of teetered-tottered, and then eventually it did turn, and then when it turned, we knew we were in trouble because it was going to come, almost right over top of our house. Now, as I mentioned in the other video, we always have a lot of supplies of everything because we live in the country. We're used to being out of power. Don't necessarily like it, but we know that so we make plans for that. Thank you. So we make plans for being out of stuff. So when we go do our last minute preps, it's not like last minute preps everybody else does. Everybody else rushes to go get milk and bread and sugar and water and stuff. We have all that. Well, we don't use sugar. We try to minimize our sugar usage, but we already have all that stuff already. So what we do, we went down to the Walmart, which is a half-hour drive for us one way. And so we picked up our last minute hurricane supplies, which was pool shock to treat our water systems. And what was that thing we went to pick up?
Chicken feed. Chicken
feed. Oh, yeah. Chicken feed. And the other reason I picked up chicken feed is because normally our bag of feed lasts 2 weeks, and it was getting close. And I didn't want it to be, I didn't know if it was going to get damaged or not, so I wanted to make sure I had an extra bag just in case.
We did buy rope, too, so that we could tie up the rest of the stuff outside.
Right.
Like our kayaks, which are very important.
Exactly. Yeah, and they're pretty light, so they can get blown away easily as well. So when we got back, then we filled up all the 55-gallon drums on the property, which are there all the time. So at any given moment, I have anywhere from, if they're all just a quarter full, right? Like I said, at any given time, I have anywhere between 50 and 200 gallons of water on the property anytime. So we just topped off everything, shocked the containers so that way the water was good and fresh and clean, and then we started doing all the water storage in house. That's where we took all the carboys and filled them up. We had 2 7-gallon aquatainers that we filled up, and
for our drinking water.
And we're going to use, and I had an IBC tote, which is one of those big white things that the industrial plants use. I have one that was used for food storage. So I'd cut that into thirds for the aquaponics system, just never got to finishing it. So I turned them upright so they would catch rainwater. So we had those filled with water, so we can use that to flush the toilet or take showers or do stuff like that. Or another thing we use it for, I'll tell you about in just a little bit, and which is coming up here in a couple minutes. So we had plenty of water and stuff. We just had to prepare for that. So then Saturday we continued our preps.
You forgot to mention about the long lines at the gas station. We had filled up all of our gas stuff, our Jeep and everything on Tuesday so that we wouldn't get caught in these. And the lines when we went there, they were just ridiculous. And they had already started running out of gas in some places.
Well, I have a gas rotation system where I have roughly, 7 or 8 5-gallon containers out in the shed that I rotate once a month and stuff. And I'd let it gotten a little low, so I went and topped those off. And that's when I saw the long lines and stuff. That was the beginning of the long lines of the gas at the gas stations and stuff. So then when Saturday rolled around, now remember, we're still at this point. The time kept changing because first it said it was going to come Saturday night, and then Sunday morning, and Sunday afternoon. So we were still thinking at this point it was going to hit Sunday night. No, Sunday morning. Saturday night. Or Sunday morning. So Saturday we went up to our local vet and we had to get our last minute prep, Sasha's medicine, because she's on. What's she on?
don't remember the name of it. She has hip dysplasia.
So
it's medicine that helps her.
Remedil?
No.
Okay. So she's on some kind of medication. So we went there to get Sasha a supply of medicine, so that way she would have enough in case they'd be closed for a week. Because her medicine only gets dispensed a week and a half at a time.
Yeah, 2 weeks.
Yeah, so we had to make sure that we had enough for that.
After Katrina, I went in and I got certified for emergency. It was Emergency Animal Rescue Services. It was called EARS. But I had to go and get all my tetanus and hepatitis and everything up to date, so that I was prepared, and I went through training so that I could go out on emergency relief.
Okay.
Awesome. I didn't know that.
And then when we were up there, because the vets is pretty close to our grocery store and a racetrack, which is right next to 75. And 75 was one of the major roads used for everybody to evacuate out. At one point, they actually shut down the southbound lanes, and they were using the southbound lanes and the northbound lanes for everybody to go north to get out of the state. Mm-hmm. And so this racetrack being right next to the gas station, the line just got horrendously long. I was actually going to top the tank off on the Jeep. It was down to about 3/4 of a tank. I was just going to top it off, and then I saw that, and I was like, yeah, I ain't dealing with those lines. I got plenty of gas. I ain't going to worry about it. So then when we got back, that's when we took the rope out, and we started walking around. We tied down the barbecue pit. We tied down the chairs and the table on the back deck, the kayaks. We also tied down our John boat to make sure the John boat wasn't going to go anywhere. Mm-hmm. And basically, if it was important to us, it got tied down some way, some method, somehow.
And everything else got put where it wouldn't blow into our house.
Well, that's what I was more concerned about, was stuff being blown into the house, not necessarily getting blown around. Because, a kayak might get blown, but it's not going to get damaged too much unless it hits something really, really hard. But it could come through a window, so we were really kind of worried about that.
Of course, the dogs started getting really anxious while we're doing all
that's
this.
That's when we started noticing it, because I think it's twofold. I think, one, they realized this is not normal behavior for mom and dad. Something's going on, and they could kind of feel that we were on edge. Plus, I think they could also sense the weather too, because they were already starting to get a little bit anxious and stuff, and we could tell because they were getting real clingy. And they were no more than 3 feet from us. I must have stepped on Sasha and Nico a dozen times over the last 4 days. 5 days, however long it's been now, because they're always underneath our yard. And then later on in the evening, again, we keep checking the weather track and stuff, and that's when we start seeing the first outer bands. And it was kind of weird because the sky was I know we're used to kind of nice sunsets out here, but this was a really weird one because we were just starting to see the outer band of it, and it was kind of like this orangish, grayish kind of thing, but then literally on the other side of the sky was crystal blue. So normally when you see skies like that, it's almost always mostly clouded. You don't see that definitive line, and that's when we started, seeing that kind of weird. It started the first effects of it coming near us, and then so then after that, that's when we saw the issue come out for our county that said everybody's in zones 1 and 2 or A and B. I can't remember how they do it.
I think it was A and
yeah, whatever they do their zones. I can't remember, but they said zones 1 and 2. Let's say it is. And all mobile homes. Well, that's us. We're a mobile home, and we're near zones 1 and 2. But we got the mandatory evacuation, and that's when we said, okay, well, we need to leave. Then we decided we're going to need to go ahead and head over to the church. This is actually on all this stuff was happening on Saturday. So we're packed up and ready to go. It's kind of eerie leaving the house, not knowing if it's going to be the last time we're going to see it or not. Yep. We're going to the church. Give Daddy kisses. I said Daddy, not Mommy. You give Mommy lovins.
He's my good boy. It's just a storm. You're going to be all right. Daddy will protect you. Yeah, our pastor was gracious enough to open up the church for anyone who needed to come, and he said we could bring our dogs because we're not leaving our dogs. We would have gone somewhere else if that had been the case. But since I am the worship leader there, we kind of went there and kind of oversaw the opening of the church. But only one other person really came to be there with us during the hurricane. So we were able to actually set up in one of the rooms that has no carpeting. We just moved the furniture to the sides and set up in there. not have to be leashed the whole time, and,
Right.
and wouldn't ruin anything in
Right.
the church. So, but it worked out. I mean, the floor was very hard, but it was a safe building to be in.
That was a rough 2 nights of sleep.
It was.
Well, actually, I didn't get any sleep on the second night. I'll talk about that in a minute. But either way, it was a rough night's sleep. So then comes, again, the hurricane path changed again, and it got even, delayed even more and stuff. So now they were talking about it hitting Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening. So pastor decided
Saturday evening.
Saturday evening, I'm sorry. Yeah,
Yes,
Saturday evening.
Saturday evening.
And so the pastor decided to go ahead and cancel Sunday's service. That way people can do the last minute preps, or if people are evacuating and stuff like that. So he actually came up to the church Saturday night, and he actually conducted a service there and recorded it with actually this camera right here and the GoPros. And then later that night, when the storm did actually start hitting, we were actually rendering video for the service. And then I had an issue where after I got it all done, I was up to about 2 a.m. working on that video. And that's when the wind started really kicking and howling, and you could feel the building kind of like stretching, and it was breathing.
And we were still a day away from it hitting. That was just the tropical force things that night. So.
Right. So then, and actually, I even got a time lapse of those bands as well too. Because we actually made 2 videos. We made the one for the church service, and then the one that we put on our page. When Barbie was singing "In the Eye of the Storm," so we rendered that one. Actually, Barbie rendered that video. I'm the one who normally edits and puts the videos together and renders, but she actually did that one. I don't remember why she did, but
because I wanted to learn.
Oh, okay, yeah. You're not taking over my job. It's my job. You're the photographer. I'm the videographer.
Yeah, I mean it was tropical winds at that point. We really don't have any footage, I guess, from the actual hurricane because we weren't about to.
It was too
go
dark.
out. It was dark. It hit in the middle of the night.
Yeah, the hurricane itself didn't
and I
hit
didn't
till
want to
Sunday
open the
night.
doors.
Yeah. Well, the hurricane itself didn't hit us until Sunday night when it was dark out, so we
Right.
couldn't have videoed anything anyway.
No.
All you would have seen was just the reflection of the rain off the light. Actually, no, you wouldn't even see that because we lost power
That's
before
true,
that, so
that's
you wouldn't even see that. Unless I shined my flashlight out there, which I had 4 flashlights with me because you know me. One's not enough when it comes to flashlights. I've got a few of them floating around everywhere.
So you ended up staying up till about 2 a.m. that morning, trying to get it to load, and
I rented it till 2 a.m. And then I tried to upload it, but because issues going on with the storm and everything else, I couldn't upload it. So then Sunday morning, I talked to Pastor. He came by and he picked it up and took it to his house because he still had power and internet. So he actually uploaded it to the Facebook page. I'll put a link in it somewhere in the description down below. So if you want to go watch that service, you can. And so there we were. So again, the path changed again, and now that was hit us till Sunday night. So it went from everywhere from Saturday night to Monday morning. That's how much it changed over the couple of days when it was actually supposed to hit us.
It was supposed to hit from like midnight until 4 a.m. or something like that.
Yeah. So that's why a lot of people don't understand the whole evacuation thing. People don't live in Florida. Well, why didn't you leave when they first told you? Because it changes all the time. It does, and it kept changing. It kept changing and changing. Then it started coming and rumbling in. The real tough wind started Sunday night about 9-ish, 8:30-ish, something like that. And but before that, Sunday we had to find something to do. So we actually started watching videos on the big screen on the church, and we powered them up, and it was just we started watching a couple of them on there, and then we decided, hey, let's go do some other stuff because just I don't know, it was just you had to keep busy. You had to keep busy. Excuse me. So then the real wind started about, like I said, 8:30 or so, and then the church lost power about 9:30. I mean, it went boom, and we had the emergency light in the hallway for about an hour and a half, and then that's when the wind started kicking up even more, and then Barbie actually took a guitar and sat in the hallway and laid her music out and started singing it and
by a flashlight. I was nervous, and music helps to calm me, so. And the other gentleman that was staying there actually came in the hallway, and we just all kind of hung out in the hallway and played songs and sang and worshipped, and it was good.
So then she went to bed, and then George went to bed, and then I just kind of laid there and I tossed and turned. I couldn't sleep for two reasons. One, because of the sounds of the building, and two, that floor just hurt. Every side of me was hurting. I'd roll on my left side, that hurt from laying on that. I'd roll on my right side, that hurt. Laid on my back, laid on my stomach. I could not get comfortable. It just hurt.
And oddly enough, I slept through most of the storm.
Yeah, I didn't.
Because I didn't sleep the night before.
So then came Monday, and we woke up, and we decided to do a walk around on the church to see what kind of damage happened to the church. And there was some water damage inside the church.
In the
sanctuary, where you can see some spotting in the ceiling. And on one spot, about a 5-foot section had gotten so soaked that the popcorn ceiling kind of flaked and fell off, and it kind of hit the carpet. And then the sign out in the street for the church, where they put the marquee, where they put up the events and stuff coming up, it got blown over on its side, so that's going to have to be repaired. But I mean, other and the new building, no damage whatsoever.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, our church is building a new sanctuary, so it just had some standing water that had blown in on the floor, and that was it.
Right.
Right.
So after we realized the church is in good order, and there was really nothing we could do because there was no power there, and plus the dogs, they were at this point they were like even extra on pins and needles. They were done. They were just ready to go. So we made the decision at that point to go ahead and come home, even though they didn't say you could go home yet. But again, we were far enough inland that we weren't in any of the flood zones.
And we're only 7 minutes from
the church, right? Exactly. So
we're kind of icky right now because we haven't had a bath in a day and a half. We've been hanging out at the church, but it's a little bit of damage done to the church. We're about to head home to see if our house is still there or not.
So you're going to see it real time. So we decided to go ahead and come home and brought the dogs home because we felt that, even though it would be hot here, it was going to be hot at the church too. But even if it's going to be, come here, this is a familiar environment for them, so they would be a little bit more at ease and stuff. And it still even took them half a day to kind of come back down off of whatever anxiousness that they had.
Well, I'm sure they were up with you a lot the night it was happening too.
Yeah, they were. So we got in the Jeep, started heading back, and it's kind of weird. It's a weird feeling. I can't even explain what it feels like, because you're driving home wondering if you even have a home to get to, or we took all the valuable stuff out of the house, like the camera gear and the video cameras and the GoPros and the computers, all the essential stuff that you need to survive off of. We took out of the house and took that with us, and then so when we pulled up to the house, we were pleasantly surprised to see that the only real damage to the house or the property was some of the skirting got blown off on our mobile home, and we had a lot of down limbs. Nothing really major, but just a lot of down limbs. And one of our trees broke in half, about midway up, it broke in half and kind of fell over on its side. It's still out there. I'm just got to get my chainsaw fixed, but I ain't that worried about it because it's up in the woods. It's not in our yard. Because we actually have 3 acres and we have a lot of like foresty or woodsy type of area. And it's right at the edge of that woods, so I'm not that worried about it right now. It can wait till I get the chainsaw fixed, basically. Actually, the wood will dry out and make it easier to cut too when it's dry. So then we got home. So we saw all this stuff that we had to get fixed and all that, and we started thinking, well, we got cooked dinner. Now, even though I've got a lot of charcoal stored and a lot of propane stored, because we live in the country, and I like to cook a lot, so I'm any given time I almost always have 4 bags of charcoal, because whenever I see the charcoal comes in the wraps with 2 bags, I always buy them and throw them in the thing, because I'm always smoking meat and stuff like that. So instead, I was like, why would I waste my good charcoal on cooking coffee or breakfast when I got all this wood laying around? So I had some cinder blocks in the property from a project that we were getting ready to do. So we put them together and made a little rocket stove out of it and started cooking dinner on that. And
most of the stuff in the freezer was still frozen. The hot dogs and kielbasa that were on the door had kind of unthawed, so we put those in the ice chest and planned on cooking those first so we didn't lose them.
Yeah, that's a good point, because then one of the first things we did was we hooked up the inverter to the Jeep and powered up the refrigerator so it would start staying cold. And we didn't want to leave the Jeep running 24/7, so we were doing an hour and a half on, and then we were doing how many hours off?
I think 2 or 3 hours.
No, it was longer than that. I think it was like 4 hours off. I think initially, I think it's what we first started doing,
Yeah.
and we found out that wasn't enough, so we started running the Jeep longer and doing less time in between, and so that was keeping the refrigerator cold. But that's even though we have a pretty good size inverter, I didn't want to overload it, so I didn't let it get above 50% capacity of the inverter. All right, so then so that kind of started winding down our first. Actually, it was still the day of the hurricane. It was the second. It was the afternoon of the day the hurricane hit us.
Oh, and you may see some footage on here. When we were coming home, we had not had a bath, in 2 days. And so we look pretty rough, especially me.
You never look rough, baby. You always look good.
But we were able to end off the day with...
Yeah, so we come home. And we don't need power because we have a well, and you need power in order for that to have water in your house. But that's one of the reasons why we store water all the time, because any kind of storm rumbles through here, we lose water. So that's why we store water. And so decided to take a shower, so we filled up a couple pitchers full of water, and of course it was not heated water, it was cold water. And why don't you talk about this shower?
Oh, it was cold. It was shockingly cold. But I had actually flashbacks. I went on a mission trip to Nicaragua a few years ago, and that's all we had there was cold water to shower in. So I was having flashbacks from that. But it was very, very, very cold.
It was painfully cold.
Yeah, we both
yelled. It was painfully cold. So then, so we go to bed and try to sleep. Now, the cool thing is because, again, I have stuff supplied or stored up. I have 2 deep cycle batteries, 2 deep cycle marine batteries that when I knew the storm was coming, I made sure they were fully charged, ready to go. So then, so that night, Monday night, super humid outside. So I brought in one of the batteries, brought in the inverter, and I hooked up a box fan to it right next to the bed and let it run all night long. That way the Jeep didn't have to run
and
power on it. It lasted all night long, yeah. Yeah, it was still going, full blast when we woke up in the morning. And so that way we were able to sleep with a fan and not have to worry about the Jeep running outside. Yeah. And then, so when we woke up that morning, and actually on Monday afternoon, it was warm, but it wasn't bad because there was still a little bit of a breeze. So it was borderline. It was borderline cool. Comfortable. Yeah, if the breezes would stop, it'd get hot. Yeah. But as long as the breeze was, it was actually kind of nice.
For Florida, it was very cool.
Yeah, the real heat didn't hit us until Tuesday because that's when the breezes stopped. I guess the storm at that point had moved up to Jacksonville or
actually Georgia.
Georgia, yeah. Mm-hmm. So they were getting all the blown up. We weren't getting any breezes at all, and it was really hot outside. We had all the windows open on the house, and we were looking for any way to maximize. And plus, one of the things we learned too is we didn't really have much energy to do anything. I mean, my goal was to get the yard cleaned up, but it was you were just zapped from the heat. You were just and there was no escape from it unless you jumped in the Jeep and turned on the AC. But then you got to get out of it. It's even worse because you're in AC and now you're not in AC, and it just it was not. So we didn't have any, so pretty unbearable heat. So then the Jeep was still powering the refrigerator and stuff. But at this point, I'm starting to realize this might not be a good, viable, long-term solution. So those are the first time those thoughts started to cross my mind, because we always use the inverter for thunderstorms, because the thunderstorms, we usually lose power for a day or a little bit less than a day, which it's fine for those kinds of events. So I'm starting thinking, I don't know how long this is going to be, and that's where the first thoughts start crossing my mind. But then, it's not just us; it's also the dogs, because we have 2 shepherds, and one of them is a curly coat shepherd, so her coat is significantly thicker than the other shepherds, and she was just miserable. She was just hot, and you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, we were hot enough, but she had a fur coat on. So imagine sitting in 90-degree heat with a fur coat. And all she could do was pant. So we went down by the garden, and those IBC totes that he talked about had nice, fresh rainwater in them. And she started drinking out of it, and we just kind of coaxed her in and helped her get into it, and she laid down in there. And
she didn't just lay in there; she laid in it, and she's like, "I'm drinking it too.
I'm drinking, and I'm gonna lay here and get cool."
Oh yeah, it was her personal sauna, personal pool. the queen herself.
So while we were out of power for about 3 days, she got into there several times, I guess, over the course of it.
Okay.
And we actually forced our other German Shepherd to get in. He didn't care for it much, but
No,
it at least cooled him off.
Yeah, Sasha, she would go for it, but Nico he wanted nothing to do with it. So then, until end of Tuesday, we were kind of winding up and, getting ready to come back inside. And of course, from being outside and all hot and sweaty and stinky, and my wife smelling like roses. We decided,
That's not what you said at the time.
So we came in and took cold showers again. But this time we noticed that the cold showers, while they were still cold, they weren't painfully cold.
We didn't yell.
No, they were still. I mean, you could bear them a little bit better, So that was kind of unusual. I didn't expect that. I expected it to be as cold as the first time, and the water wasn't any temperature difference. The water was the same temperature because it was stored inside the house, the source that we're coming from. So it was always the same temperature. So then comes Wednesday, and this would be day three. Still no power, and every day I'm calling my boss, in the morning, letting him know what's going on. And he's kind of like my internet resource because we have no internet here. So I'd ask him, okay, go to Withlacoochee Electric, and she was doing the same thing with her people. Mm-hmm. And he looked it up, and he told me, he says, yeah, they say that they are saying 7 to 10 days out before we get power back. And that's when I started thinking, okay, the inverter and the Jeep solution's not a good solution for 7 to 10 days. Yeah. And so we started thinking about other methods for that, and I'll talk about that here in just a second. So then we continue cooking on the rocket stove.
So we had hot dogs with eggs 2 mornings. We had coffee every morning. My husband fixed me
and
then
we
coffee.
had the kielbasa
stir fry
with
vegetables
the night before and stuff like that. Yeah. So the rocket stove did really, really well. It's funny because now everybody at church, because she posted pictures of it on Facebook, and
I was proud of you, baby.
And so everybody at church calls me MacGyver. I'm like, oh, great, because that brings an expectation now that that I don't feel that I can live up to, but it brings an expectation. But I mean, anybody can build a rocket stove. Go watch YouTube. Anything you want to do is on YouTube. So I built my first rocket stove when we lived in Plant City 4 years ago out of bricks. I did it actually the correct way. I used fire bricks. I didn't have any fire bricks on the property up here, but I did have some cinder blocks. So I knew that in using the rocket stove with cinder blocks, I was pretty much going to trash those cinder blocks. Because they're not designed for that. But you know what? It was going to get us through what we had to get through. And I paid $1 a piece for them anyway. And I'm only going to throw away maybe like 5 of them. So it cost me $5. So whoop-de-doo. And the fuel source didn't cost me anything because I had wood everywhere.
You were cleaning up.
I was cleaning up little twigs at a time because that's the way a rocket stove works. You use these little tiny twigs, and that's actually what it can get enough energy out of that to cook your meals and stuff.
So day 3, the heat's starting to really get to us. And like he said, we didn't think the inverter on the Jeep was going to work anymore. And we're tired of living like the Swiss Family Robinsons.
Yeah, we were done with that.
So we did go ahead and fix the skirting and everything.
And started some cleanup.
Yeah, started a little bit of cleanup.
We had some cranberry hibiscus bushes out in front of the house. Another thing that happened on Wednesday was I went down to feed the fish and noticed the aquaponics system was starting to crash. At that point, we had 7 dead fish. So I took them out and started trying to diagnose, trying to figure out what was going on with them. It crashed for 2 reasons. One reason because we had everything in the grow bed, mostly because of my shoulder surgery. And the other reason, 3 days no power. So it kind of pushed it over the edge. And so the fish started dying. And then that's why I brought the fish up. I didn't want them to go to waste. And that's why I figured I had nothing else better to do on this hot, humid day. Hey, let's clean some fish on the back porch. That didn't go over so well with the wife. She was not happy with me that I was cleaning fish on the back porch, even though I put plastic down on the table to protect everything.
Yeah, but the plastic wasn't on the wood decking that soaked all up everything.
Very little got on the wood decking, and so it's hard to learn how to tell how to gut fish or clean fish for your first time if you don't have YouTube available to learn by. Because we were trying to pull up videos and we could play like 10 seconds and then it would stop, and then play another 10 seconds and then it would stop, and play another 10 seconds and it would stop, and oh my Lord. Yeah, I need to get a friend of mine to teach me how to clean fish. Found one already. He promised he'd teach me how to do it, but the problem is now all my fish are way too small to harvest.
Yes.
You can't cut a fish up that's that small right now, because all that's left in my aquaponics system are adolescents and babies. So it's going to be a while before I do that, unless I happen to catch something fishing, which that's going to happen.
You have to go fishing to catch stuff.
Yeah.
So a friend of mine posted on Facebook that Home Depot had 200 generators in. So we drove 30 minutes to go take a look at them. Didn't know if we were going to buy any. We just wanted to look at them, and we found out that we can probably use them other times when our power goes out, because we get storms where it knocks it out a lot. If any wind blows, it pretty much goes out. And we have our bus that we're converting, our schoolie, so we'll be able to use it for that. So we decided to go ahead and buy one, and brought it home, and Chuck got it all hooked up about
12:30. Got it running about 12:30, and then we decided, okay, we let it run for a while. We cooled off, and then we took another cold shower.
Except it wasn't really cold this time. We liked it.
It was actually refreshing. It's amazing how your body acclimates to those kinds of things, and it starts getting easier and easier. And as we were because what we were doing is we were getting ready to go to church, not our church, but our pastor's house, because he was having a cookout at his house. They have a sports ministry and a concession stand that feeds that sports ministry, and the freezer didn't have any power, so all the hot dogs and hamburger stuff were going bad. So they brought him over to his house. They did a cookout and had invited everybody from church over, and we did a Bible study session and a what do you call it?
Just what we're thankful for, how God blessed us and kept us safe during the storm.
So we're getting ready to go to that, and all of a sudden, at about 5:30, the fan starts going. The ceiling fan starts going, and we were both looking at each other like, "Is that really happening?" Yeah. So the power came on, but we left the generator attached to the refrigerator, the box fans, because we had lots of friends that said that their power would come on, and then an hour or two later, it'd go back off, and then come back on again, and go back off again. So we left stuff on the generator until we got back, and then we got back from the Bible study.
And the temperature
and walked into the house.
Yeah, it had dropped from like 90 down to 75.
Yeah, it was 90 when we first fired up, and then we walked in the house, it was 75. And it was like, it's funny, 75 sounds like warm, but it felt like an ice box when we walked into the house, which was welcomed, very welcomed. Yeah.
So needless to say, we slept pretty well Wednesday night, finally. And then the next morning the power was still on, but we still didn't have internet. So Chuck, I think you went on down to take a look at the aquaponics then.
And we were still getting more dead fish, so that's when we decided to do an emergency flush. And I drained out about 75% of the water and refilled it with well water, which is what we have here. We're not connected to the city. And filled it up with well water, and they seem to be okay.
Planted some plants.
Planted some plants and stuff, so hopefully we averted the rest of this fish dying. All the mature fish are pretty much dead now, so all I have in there is adolescent and babies, so it's going to be 6-8 months before we get eating size fish again. But, that's what happens when you have a hurricane in Florida,
So then we decided to venture out for the first time after the hurricane. And we were going to the grocery store to get a few things, and found out that our neighborhood was flooding. It floods sometimes when we get a lot of rain, just right over the road or up to the road. But it was completely flooded over and into a cow pasture on the opposite side of the road. So, probably about a quarter of a mile up from the river has flooded or had flooded. And but they set up a detour, the county did. So we were able to detour off of our road onto the Withlacoochee State Trail, which is a bike trail that goes behind our house.
People use it to run and jog and ride their bikes.
And horses.
And horses. It's not for motor vehicle traffic. Matter of fact, we took the grandboys out there one time with their little battery-operated scooters, and somebody came by and from one of the park officials and then yelled at us.
The park Nazi got us.
Yeah, the park Nazi got us. Because our grandboys, who were 8 and 6 at the time, I think, were riding their battery-operated skateboards scooters on the trail, and how dangerous that was. So it's way more safe for them to ride them on the street in front of our house.
But now we've ridden our bikes and our Jeep on the Withlacoochee Trail.
Yeah, exactly. So then this morning we wake up, or not this morning, Friday morning we wake up, still have power. That's a good thing, still got power. and still don't have any internet. I talked to Bright House. They said it's going to be. They don't know when it's going to come back on. They're bringing the system back up as the communities get their power back on. I told him we had our power back on, so he looked us up, and he said that our node is listed as a hurricane recovery status, which means they're working 24/7 to fix it.
But at least you've been able to work some using your hotspot.
The hotspot on my phone, but it's sporadic at best because everybody's using their cellular internet right now, so it's sporadic at best. Matter of fact, I've been trying to file an expense report for the last 2 hours because I'm trying to click on the thing and it keeps wanting to come back up, and I'm still trying to get. I'm going to get it one way or another because I have to have it in before Monday morning, so gotta get it done.
And 90% of the stuff I do is on the cloud, so I have not been able to do much of anything other than check email and respond to a few messages and stuff.
Right.
A couple of phone calls to help walk some people through some things. It's Friday, and we came out to run up to the store real quick, and yesterday this water was way around the curve. It was just barely covering thing, and we had an exit. As you can see, the trucks and stuff going through here now. This is right down the street from our house. Probably, half a mile? Anyway, as you can see how far it comes up on the trucks. So it is now at the bottom of our street, and we live about 10 houses down the street, this other street. So we are on the top of the hill, so hopefully it will not flood up that far, but I've never seen it like this before. So we took a break around lunch and decided to go just check on the flood.
On Friday.
Yeah.
On Friday?
Yeah. Just to check on the flood. And we got down as far as the end of our road, which is 4/10 of a mile from our house.
Right.
And apparently the flood waters have risen all the way up to that now and are now blocking off our detour.
Out of the neighborhood.
Yes. There are some large trucks, or not large trucks, but
Four-wheel drive pickup trucks. And
yeah,
stuff.
that are getting through, and a couple of cars even ventured through it, although I wouldn't.
Yeah.
But looks like we're going to be stuck here until.
Hey, we got the bus. We drive the bus through there. The bus is nice and tall.
Hey, we have a John boat and
we got kayaks.
I guess that's where we're at, but.
Yeah. So, well.
What did you learn?
What did I learn? I learned I don't like being out in the heat for 4 days in a row. The Florida August September heat 4 days in a row. I also learned that I wasn't quite as prepared as I thought it was. I mean, I still could have had some other.
Prepared.
I could have had some other. Well, there was some documentation stuff that I'd assume I'd have access to that I didn't. So I'm gonna have to download that documentation and have hard copies of. That's one thing I learned. What was one thing you learned?
I guess the biggest thing that I learned is that people are still inherently nice to each other and want to help their neighbors out. We've had lineman crews and stuff coming from all over the U.S. to help, and food pouring in, and neighbors giving up their generators so that someone who had special needs could be taken care of. Mm-hmm. Taking food to people who didn't have it. Just everybody's being a good neighbor, and it's sad that it takes a disaster for that to come out in people. If we were just that kind to each other all the time, mm-hmm. our country would be so much better off.
It would be, yeah, absolutely. So we did learn some things from this, and that doesn't mean that we are going to be happy and exuberant because the next hurricane's coming along. We can apply our newfound knowledge, but we've learned from this experience. So again, we apologize for not being online for the past 4, 5, 6 days, however long it takes to get this thing rendered and put on Facebook, to get this thing put on YouTube. And when you watch the video, keep in mind it is a video from over 4 or 5 days, so you're going to see us wearing different clothes because there are sometimes we wore multiple outfits in the same day.
And looking pretty haggard when we hadn't had a bath for 2 days.
Well, I was looking pretty haggard. You were looking pretty hot.
No.
Yes, you were. You were looking pretty good.
But we will keep everyone in our prayers, and Florida's got a long road with all the flooding and the devastation, especially down in the Keys and Naples, mm-hmm. and Jacksonville even got some really, really bad flooding, and the start of our neighborhood here. But just
And
continue to help
yeah,
people.
the thing too is don't just rule all this out because you don't live in Florida. You don't have to worry about hurricanes. You people up in the Northeast, you've got winter storms, snowstorms and stuff like that. And you got every part of the country has its own weather anomaly it's got to worry about. The key is be prepared for it. Don't rely on just the county or the state going to be there to rescue, because they may or may not be. And don't assume, well, I'm only going to survive for 24 hours because then the grocery stores will have food and stuff again. Yeah, no, don't rely on that. So,
as my husband says, it's better to have it and not need it
than need it, not have it. Amen to that. So the next video comes out, live your own story.
Those aren't no ordinary caterpillars. Those are killer caterpillars.
They're saying that it's a record-breaking hurricane for the Atlantic right now.
Huge.
It's huge.
It's got big hands.
Don't put that in there.
Why not? Why?
You can put huge, but don't put that.
Stupid absolute lie. Are you done?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll put on the flashers. Be-doo, 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 be-doo.
Yeah, that's an outtake. Don't do that again.
Be-doo, be-doo, be-doo. We're not scared.
Ain't scared.
Ain't scared. Hold on. So then, stupid flies. Get out of here, fly. You're not going to be in my video. Outtake number 3. So
Radio kill the radio star.
Generator. Because it could be this weekend or even longer. So I got that running, the refrigerator and the fans and stuff like that in the house. This Robin Caruso stuff's getting old. Now this morning, Barbie's got to have her coffee. And if that means coffee by Rocket Stove.